Um, okay, well, thanks everybody for coming back, and I hope that you had a good lunch, a good rest, and then a little bit of think about what to finish up in the report. I was thinking of first going into the report drafting session here and just drafting a few paragraphs for the harvest strategy policy and other business. Over lunch, I came up with a few paragraphs that might be helpful, maybe a good starting point. And then we can backtrack and cover those paragraphs earlier on and just make sure that we have those ready to go for adoption as well. So if that's okay, I'll share my screen again. And find it. Okay. I imagine you're all seeing the report now.
Yep, we are.
Thank you. Okay. So this is the section for the draft harvest strategy policy. And first the MSAB noted it. And then this paragraph 45 is a paragraph that was in the document yesterday. And I wanted to, we thought, well, maybe it doesn't belong up above, and we moved it down here at least temporarily. And I'm just, I think it fits well here. And just wondering if the MSAB is interested in keeping that here and if they have any suggestions for changing that. Not hearing anything. I think that was useful. Okay, under consideration of the draft harvest policy, I didn't hear any edits other than the one Chris suggested, which is a pretty small edit that I can just handle on my own. I don't think that needs to be a request or a recommendation. But are there any major edits or considerations for the draft harvest policy that the MSAB has? Anybody came up with anything? Feel free to speak out. Doesn't
we have a
need
couple
to. Oh, okay, good.
We have Anne-Marie, and then Chris's hand popped up, but it's gone now. Oh, it's back now. Okay, we'll go Anne-Marie and then Chris.
Not actually about the harvest strategy policy in specific, but number 45. I think we talked about a whole lot of other things that the commissioners take into account other than short-term trends in spawning biomass. So just a comment that we might want to either add a whole bunch of things to the list or make it a little more generic in terms of like annual meeting information presented, et cetera, et cetera.
I think for this one, it was very important to have the concept that short-term trends in spawning biomass were, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard a lot of people say, well, the recent decisions were based on short-term trends in the spawning biomass, and that's why, we were talking about the objective of a threshold maintaining above a certain spawning biomass, but it was more about the trend in the spawning biomass. But you are correct, Anne-Marie, as that's not the only consideration. So I think it's useful to at least have among other considerations. But I think it was important for the MSAB to highlight that the short-term trends were important.
Yep, that works for me.
Okay. Anything else on any recommended edits or 45? And then we can, well, I don't see any hands right now, but a potential recommendation that I see from the MSAB is recommending that the commission consider endorsing the draft harvest strategy policy, noting that the changes may be made to the harvest strategy policy in the future as more research and MSC evaluations are completed. Want to make sure that we secure the future of the MSAB here, so that you all have these opportunities to have fun with me in the future. But I wonder if there's any comments on this as a recommendation from the MSAB. see Anne-Marie.
I had flung a note in the chat yesterday, sort of forgot that I had. And it was around the diagram. I think it's pretty generic in terms of what I was, or actually more around the communication of separating the MSAB process from the annual meeting process in that HSP diagram. So I don't know if the group sort of wanted to talk about that at all. I sent the co-chairs as well as Alan just sort of a quick sketched out diagram of what that might look like, but also noted that MSAB wasn't in that diagram, so wanted to sort of try to put that in there as well. So I don't know what kind, how much discussion you want to have about the document, or as you were mentioning to Peggy, I think before lunch, is just to send you comments as we go. Does that make more sense? Or
yeah. Thanks, Anne-Marie. I think some big comments like this, that diagram, that could be worthy of putting in the MSAB report. If it's something pretty substantial and important to the document, saying, the MSAB recommends or requests modifying the section on reference points or something like that. I think that would be worthwhile. But if it's adding some text, I can easily do that. With regard to the figure, the way that I see the figure is that it's describing the process of determining the regulatory area mortality limits. And the MSAB is actually the one that influenced the development of the entire figure. The MSAB is not necessarily influencing the actual annual decision-making process and the management procedure, but they had this. If I was to draw the influence of the MSAB, it would be like a wider view of it that then says the MSAB was instrumental in creating this figure and how this figure works. And so I don't see how in this figure, and maybe I can copy it real quick and throw it in here so we can all see what I'm talking about. Yeah, this one here. Yeah, I don't see where the MSAB would come into this process of data collection, assessment, TCY, and then the annual meeting. They're more. You go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think my more substantive comment was on the coastwide scale to break that up into two parts. Like right now, it's a bit smushy, for lack of a better technical term, in terms of there's the annual stock assessment, where we have the actual FIS, we have the actual stock assessment, and it comes up with, it pops it into the management procedure, and we get that coastwide TCY value. And then there's something separate, which is the MSC evaluation. And the MSC evaluation has a simulated FIS, it has a simulated stock assessment, and it simulates the coastwide TCY, and it simulates, right? So there's right now, I guess that's the question, is this diagramming the MSC process, or is it describing the actual in-season stock assessment?
This is describing the in-season process of determining the mortality limits. And so I don't see the MSC as part of this process per se, other than the MSC developed this whole process, especially the management procedure over here.
And I
certainly
think part of it is that I think part of where that disconnect is that this diagram only comes up at MSAB.
Right.
Like, you're the one who's always presenting it. It doesn't come up as like, this is the harvest procedure. This is how the MS. Anyways, but I think I get what you're saying. And so then the other comment is that the gray box that says regulatory area mortality limits needs to include coastwide as well in terms of what the commission is recommending or adopting, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, which coastwide is the sum of the regulatory area mortality limits.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it can also be the way that it has been interpreted before is that the coastwide comes out of, and so
right.
the only thing that the commissioner is able to do is divvy up the coastwide, which is not what they're saying.
Oh, I get what you're saying. That is a good point. Okay, how about I'll take. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. I'll take those. I'm going to write a few extra notes here for myself to remember that. But maybe it would be helpful. Here we are. I'm trying to figure out where I'm at. What if? Let's put this as a request. How would you say it? How did I phrase it down here? How's that sound, Anne Marie? That is a little bit. It has the specific that you say there, but also inspires the Secretariat to really think about the whole figure. Not sure if you were agreeing or not with that, Anne Marie. Didn't hear if anything was being said. Just checking the chat here. Okay, let's see. Yep. Okay. I see Anne Marie is writing something. Well, mic issues. Sounds good, she says. How about we move on to Michelle then? Oops.
Yeah. So my comment is relative to the language, the paragraph above on the harvest strategy policy, paragraph 45,
Mm-hmm.
or no, 47.
Okay.
And so I was wanting to express an endorsement or support for the harvest strategy policy in the actual seeing the value in providing the documentation and communication of what the harvest strategy policy is, and kind of having that be a separate thought than the recommendation of the commission actually consider endorsing this policy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So if we put it as accepted, that raises it to level 1. Agreed is a level 2. And this is something that you'd want the commission to see. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yeah, just expressing support for having the harvest strategy policy documented and available from a transparency perspective. So more endorsing the concept of documenting the policy.
About help me with any wording here. Important document describing the policy or the procedures or am I getting close here,
Yeah.
Michelle?
Well, it's more of endorsed the documentation of
Okay.
the harvest strategy policy and sees the value in of the document as a communication tool or something to that effect.
Or we could even be more vague and say describing the management of Pacific halibut. Oh man. Any other suggestions there, Michelle, modifications or additions?
No, that's fine with me. But
Okay.
yeah, happy to hear if others agree.
Any disagreement? See you. Thank you. Excellent. No, I think that's a great paragraph for the MSAB to say. Okay. Any thoughts on 48? If not, we can move on to other business. And thanks, Gwen, for your summary in the chat. I took that summary and tried to write a few paragraphs. I thought splitting this up might be useful, and it begins with the MSAB agreed that 2 meetings of the MSAB should occur each year, one in the spring before the SRB and one in the fall before the interim meeting. And then I feel like from that follows the MSAB recommended that the 21st session of the MSAB021 be held in the first half of May, occur over 2 to 3 days, and be in person if possible. And then followed from that was Kurt's suggestion that the cost of an in-person meeting could be reduced by holding meetings in locations with no-cost meeting spaces that are easily accessible and are close to some members of the MSAB, and maybe held in countries with good dollar something. But yeah, so I felt like this might be a good order. Any suggestions or comments on this? Okay. I don't see any comments on that. I think that was an excellent discussion we had, and through the grapevine, I hear that an in-person meeting may be possible. It's not off the table yet next year, so that will be good. If anybody does have any suggestions on a place to hold an in-person meeting, just feel free to email me and let me know if you want to pitch me. You can give me a pitch for holding it in your area or some area you want to go to. So that brings us to the end of the report, but we have a few things to clean up top. And I'm going to go up there. While I'm going up there, I remembered that the one thing I'm not sure if the MSAB wants to take up before we break is the brochure that is info document 02. That was a request from MSAB 19. And the MSAB was hoping to, make a brochure on the fishing versus the environment that would be presented or brought to the annual meeting. So we can have a look at that if people want, and we can schedule a little bit of time just for a brief look at that brochure. But I think the most important thing is to make sure we get what's in the report sort of finished up and completed before the end of the day. Any thoughts on when people would like to look at the brochure, if at all, or prioritize that over this report at this point in time, or keep going through the report?
My preference is to go through the report and then maybe review the brochure before we get to the final draft and adoption.
Sure. That sounds like a good plan. I think that's my preference as well. Oh, Anne-Marie had a comment. Do we need 48 now that we have 47? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Forrest is stepping out. Thanks, Forrest. Appreciate it. Okay. So back up to the top, I'm just going to walk through a few of the things that we need to tie up here. So I'll add in this quote of the objectives of the commission, ABCD. And then, so something we did here was we deleted these two recommendations. And what has remained is a recommendation commission priority, that the commission priority objective optimize average coastwide TCY be changed to maximize the average coastwide TCY. And the yield, yeah, so I didn't quite finish this up. And the yield and variability in yield objectives be given equal consideration to allow for the evaluation of trade-offs between these two objectives. Is that what the MSAB would like to recommend regarding optimizing average coastwide TCY? I think I can clean up this wording. Any comments on this?
Not seeing any.
Okay, so I'll read it. Recommended the commission priority objective optimize average coastwide TCY, objective C, be changed to maximize average coastwide TCY, and that this objective, along with the variability and yield objective D, be given equal consideration to allow for the evaluation of trade-offs between these two objectives. Any thoughts? We're good with that?
I'm good with it.
Okay. No comments, no hands. Okay, was 16 is still highlighted. Let me unhighlight these so I remember. Take a look at 16 while I unhighlight these. There may be some that we don't need to discuss, and I forgot to unhighlight. I think there was still a little bit of discussion about this. Any comments on this one? Maintaining a coastwide TCY above a threshold may be useful. May define a minimum coastwide TCY, may be a proxy, and may be important to stakeholders. Is the MSAB comfortable noting that? If so, we can move on to the recommendation. Keep 16 there. Okay. So 20, 21, and 22. Now, these are all related. And they're all related to the commission objective, updating the commission objective, the long-term coastwide spawning stock biomass at or above a biomass reference point be 36%, at least 50% or more of the time. 20 says change the reference point to be 40%, which is a defendable proxy for BMEY and more precautionary than be 36%. 21 is a little bit different. It says maintain it above, it removes the at or. So it's above a biomass reference point at least 50% of the time. And some discussion whether to change that reference point. And then 22 is completely different and changes the whole objective to maintain the long-term coastwide female spawning biomass at or above a biomass reference point, or changing it to maintain the long-term coastwide spawning biomass, TCY, whatever that's to be, at or above a biomass reference point at least some percentage of the time. So let's walk backwards. Is there any MSAB member that would like to consider this recommendation of actually changing the objective to an absolute biomass or TCY objective? I'm not hearing any support for that one. We'll mark that with strike through at this point in time. We can come back to it. So now, related to these, we have the simple wording up top, maintaining the at or above, but changing the reference point. Or we have removing the at and potentially changing the reference point. Any comments on either of those? Support for either one? So two concepts, removing the at, or keeping it, and then changing the reference point.
I thought we kind of landed on we weren't changing the reference point. Or maybe I misunderstood the discussion.
Yeah, I just want to verify where we're at there. Chris, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think I started this rodeo, and based on the discussion that we went through and some of the points that Forrest made and you made, Dr. Hicks, I'm sort of inclined now to say, okay, let's leave it as is.
At the 36%.
Yeah.
So that means 20 is out. So now the question is, anybody have any more comments on changing the B 36%?
We have Michelle with her hand up.
Okay.
Not a comment on changing the B36. I'm fine maintaining the B36, but I was going to support removing the at or.
Okay. So we have Michelle in support of basically 20 as it's phrased right now. I'm just going to accept that change. So that would be changing it by just removing the at or, and everything else remains the same. So it would read, maintain the long-term coastwide female spawning stock biomass above a biomass reference point be 36% at least 50% or more of the time.
Chris's hand is up.
Yeah, thanks. I'm inclined to leave it at the at or above, and the reason I'm saying that is because I guess I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. But it's a threshold. But some looking at it, as Marine Stewardship Council has done, looks at the at or above and says, "Oh, that's kind of a target," and so it kind of gives us a bit of wiggle room there in those discussions. And I think if we just said if we just put it to above, then all of a sudden it becomes a threshold, and somebody could say, well, hold it, what is your target reference point? Whereas if it's at or above and with it at least 50%, it's so you're you could be below 50, you could be above 50, so you could be, I guess it allows us to eat our cake and eat it too. That's the only thing about the current wording. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm thinking about this too, and I tend to, during this part of the meetings, any meeting, especially with the SRB and the MSAB, I think about, okay, how am I going to explain this to the commissioners? And maybe in helping out the co-chairs too, because they'll be doing a lot of explaining as well. It's a pretty, I think it's a significant change, but it really has no consequence at this point in time. And it would require quite a bit of explanation to the commission. So I'm happy to do that, but that's just another point that I'm making. It's a lot of explanation. And I'm wondering, maybe if the MSAB is at, not willing to bring this up, elevate this to a level 1, maybe an agreed or a note on this, just agreeing that the word at is not entirely necessary in this objective, because it's likely that the any management procedure chosen will maintain it above that threshold. Something like that. That's a potential way forward as well. Do we have a strong preference to maintain this as a recommendation? Do we have a preference to keep this concept in as a note or agreed? Is there anybody that would like to keep it in as a note or agreed? I think it's a really good point, Michelle.
We have Chris and then Michelle with their hands up.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. As mentioned, I prefer to leave the wording as is for the reasons I've said. And also, I think to get it to where it was, we went through a few roundabouts there just to get to what we've currently got. So I guess I wouldn't support making it a recommendation. Because like I said, I'd rather leave the wording as is. Thanks.
Just as Alan's typing that out, we have Michelle and then Michael. So Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of perception, I guess. By removing the at or and providing more specificity of what we want, where we want to be, I guess in my view allows makes the objective to be more of a target than a threshold. And if I guess if I think of a threshold, I think that there's some accompanying action that is triggered by that threshold, or that it signals something, and there's going to be some action as a result. And anyway, in general, I'm looking for our objectives to be as specific as possible. And if the MSAB really wants to be above B36 at least 50% of the time, then I think we should say that. If Chris, I'm not sure I'm following your analogy of having your cake and eating it too. But if you are comfortable with being either at B36 or above it, rather than wanting to be above it, then I can live with that as well, if that's what you're trying to say.
I see Michael Fowler's got his hand up first.
I was just thinking that if we leave the wording as it is, I don't see why it's needed to be a recommendation. It just needs to be a note or an agreement. I don't see it as a recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Chris.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I think we're splitting a very fine hair here, Michelle. I don't disagree with that. But I think the thing is, if we say above a biomass reference point, that all kind of clearly becomes a threshold. And a threshold is something you're trying to avoid. And then it's definitely not a target. Whereas a target is something you're shooting for. And that way, if we say at or above a biomass reference point, and then we use a 50%, then somebody reading it could interpret and say, well, and, quite frankly, if we hovered around B36 50% of the time, above it 50%, below it 50%, but we hovered around it, that would be a great, we'd achieving a great objective from my perspective. But I think the at or above is what keeps it in the target field, as well as, but it also, yes, it is still treads into the realm of a threshold, and we do refer to it as a threshold. But it's just a threshold is something you're avoiding, or you're trying to avoid, and that's how I look at it.
Any thoughts on the modified text? And we can go back to the original text if you want, but I'm trying to capture the essence of the discussion in that. And really what Chris is saying with his have his cake and eat it too is it's a target and a threshold all at the same time, with the at representing a target, but the wording or above allows the flexibility to select an MP that results in a higher relative spawning biomass than a target reference point would imply, which may better satisfy additional objectives. And what I'm trying to get at here is that, you can go and find the MP that meets the target, and that would be SPR 39%. And you look at that and they go, oh, wow, that's too much interannual variability in the yield. So I can improve that by backing off and allowing this to be above that reference point. Any thoughts on this, especially Michelle? Would you be accepting of this wording? Or we could add some wording, Michelle, that gets to the point that that the at and the or above might be at odds with each other, or it's not really clear in describing the higher objective. Tom?
Yeah, I'm just curious, since this was an objective that was set at the commission level, so I don't know the exact wording. What did they want it to be implied as? Try to keep it around 36%, or I mean, what was their implication? Because came from them, not us.
That is a very interesting history, Tom. And so this started out a long time ago, and the commission says we need a target objective, and the secretariat said, well, when you have a target objective, you're really defining the SPR because that's going to tell you the thing. Tom, there's some feedback. Would you mind muting for a second?
No, I'm not on. That's come somebody else. I'm hearing the same thing. I've been hearing it off and on, so, but it's not
okay.
me.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's off now. So yeah, the history of this is that the commission wanted a target objective, and so we said, well, if we have a target, we don't need any other objectives. And then they said, but we still need a target objective. So we developed this objective. And then it was originally worded as maintain the spawning biomass at a B36%. And the MSAB made some recommendations that says, well, this recommendation is actually keeping it above. So that's when we changed the wording about 2 years ago to at or above, or maybe it was just a year ago. And so that's sort of the history, and that the at or above was to satisfy the commission's desire for a target, but also allow for the flexibility to remain above, which is sort of what gets at in this paragraph. I see there's some other hands up. Go ahead, Chris. Oh, Chris lowered your hand, or?
Oh, sorry. Others or maybe we just let others speak, because I had more of a grammatical thing. But let's others speak on the
general concept.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim. Or was that Michelle? Were you next?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
And I'm fine with the wording as it is. I guess what the topic that I was teeing up was more of, does the MSAB want this to be a target? But I think Tom's point and your explanation, Alan, is well noted that I don't know that the MSAB necessarily wants to come out in favor one way or the other, given that this is a commission objective, or that that we necessarily have agreement, or that it matters how it's characterized. So I think how you've described it here is fine.
And thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that, because this is actually something that's really important to me. And we've worked for a number of years on this wording. I'm fine with, I've always been fine with above, but the at was sort of something that I think there is some desire for within the commission. So I think explaining it this way actually helps me a lot as well. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, that's okay. I think everything has been said, been covered off already, so that's okay.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Okay, Chris, let's get into some grammar.
Well, let's maybe forget it. I don't want to open up a can of worms. I guess the only thing I'll say it, but it says at least 50% or more of the time. Do we really need the or more? Wouldn't it just be at least 50% of the time? Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Anyway, that's the existing wording.
Yeah,
just don't mess with it. It's not worth it. I've always found that kind of interesting. But anyway, maybe just leave it at the status quo and we're good.
I see what you're saying. I think that's sort of the evolution of this objective. It's just been sort of become a lot of words in there to explain a lot of different concepts. So maybe we go back down to number 21.
Trying to make it clearer is making it more obtuse.
Yes, it is. All right. Is the MSAB okay with paragraph 20? Any objections to this paragraph? Any suggestions for, we'll go through the adoption as well. Okay. All right. Yeah, so we have 21 is that. We've gone through these. Okay, right. So 28 was this one where we had the plot in there. And was there more discussion to be had on 28? Any suggestions to improve this? There was something about, I think, having more explanation on why this is. Oh, and that's what 29 was about. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're just revisiting this because you worked on that 29 wording, the wording for 29. And I think what you've got there for 29 addresses at least what my recollection was the questions surrounding it were.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to do that. That's always fun for me to do. Okay, now we're down. Oh yeah, we didn't finish the discussion about this one, which is the declines in declines in the TCY with the different FIS designs, and the MSAB was looking for some explanation. And I wonder if, well, one thing is if the MSAB wants to maintain paragraph 35, that's great. And I'm wondering if maybe a way to solve this is to have the MSAB do a similar request as above and request more information on why the TCY declines due to uncertainty and does not increase. Any thoughts on that? I'm not sure I can really describe it succinctly in a paragraph.
Go ahead, Michelle.
I don't think that more is necessarily needed there, Alan, to answer your question, but I'm just thinking, just adding, the coastwide TCUI declined by 450,000 pounds due to increases or increased uncertainty when moving from should satisfy the thought that I was having. And then I wasn't also, I did have a question on what is the linkage, or is it necessary to call out the SPR equals 43%? Or is it regardless of what the SPR is?
It was, yeah, it was actually consistent across the SPR values. So, I mean, it's probably not exactly 450,000 pounds for any of these, but that accepted that the average declined by, I'm going to put approximately, due to increased uncertainty and potential bias in this WPUE.
It should be bias. I think you typed biomass.
Oh, I did. Thanks. That's my fingers. My brain was way ahead of my fingers, and my fingers were on autopilot. And do you want, again, due to further increases in uncertainty and potential bias?
Yeah, that looks good. Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Okay. Any thoughts on this? We'll have a chance to look at it again during adoption. Okay. So 36 was added, and this was just to with reduced designs result. Right. So this was noting that it was unclear if we're not completed. I don't like that not completed. Oh, no, they weren't completed. Yeah. I'm not going to say completed. I'm just going to say done because those were not done. Yeah, it's already there. Okay. Any thoughts on 36? And also, is there a follow-up? Well, I guess the follow-up could be down below where the MSAB recommends additional analyses of the triennial assessment frequency with reduced FIS designs.
We have Lynn's hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Hopefully y'all can hear me this afternoon.
We sure can.
Excellent. This is one of the points I was struggling on yesterday. I know we were trying to look at things on the coast-wide level as the MSAB, but I think I'm struggling that we're not including anything that areas that don't get surveyed regularly would have some additional variability. And I'm thinking particularly those areas that are on the edge at the end of the range, area 4 and area 2A. I don't know how to include it in here, but it seems like something should be included there, that if we go to this triennial assessment and reduced FIS, it's likely going to increase the variability in those fringe areas that don't get the FIS every year. And maybe I'm the only one. It's a concern that's trying to give me a headache here this afternoon.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point, Lynn. I'm trying to figure out where that best fits, but I don't think the assessment needs to be considered in that statement. I think it's just simply a statement about the FIS designs, and because you just have more uncertainty or potential bias in those areas that are not consistently surveyed. And that actually feeds into the assessment, increasing the uncertainty in the assessment. So whether it's an annual assessment or a triennial assessment, I think that same concept is or that same concern will be there, that you will not have these areas surveyed. It's captured a tiny little bit here in that, there's these non-economic values to the FIS, a better understanding of area-specific population trends. But I am wondering if maybe a note that reduced FIS designs met the conservation objective resulted in lower median coastwide TCYs, higher interannual variability. Maybe something along the lines of this, Lynn, will be helpful. Lynn, would having a paragraph on its own be helpful to sort of capture this? Or even an agreed, something like that?
Yeah, and I appreciate maybe I'm the only one who has this concern just because of
Oh, no.
the area
No,
I work in.
no, we have
But
that concern here at the Secretariat.
yeah, some of the area 4 I know has some issues as well. That works for me. I think it notes my concern. If others agree that it's appropriate there. Thank you for taking my concern into consideration.
No problem. I think it's good. Any thoughts on this paragraph or 36 or 37?
We did have Michael's hand up. I saw that it
Oh.
went down, but Forrest's hand is up. So go ahead, Forrest.
Yeah, this wasn't discussed, so maybe this is not a good part of report writing, but if there's uncertainty in those areas, so in 36, we talked about uncertainty leading to a decreased TCEY. How does that apply to 37? We just talk about interannual variability, but we don't say anything about like decreased TCEY. So this is more of a question than anything. Is any uncertainty likely to lead in a reduction of TCEY just because of decision making and people not knowing, so they're likely to be more precautionary?
I mean, that from these results, it seems that more uncertainty in the FIS designs results in a decrease in the TCY. How that relates to decision making is an unknown. But I imagine with increased uncertainty, some people may be more precautionary. But that's not. Yeah, I think that's outside of. I don't think that was really presented or analyzed or discussed at this meeting. But it's a good point. Yeah, and so if we were to do the triennial, we're hypothesizing that it would reduce the TCYs. No, yeah, you're right. It says it would result in increased interannual variability in the coastwide TCY. Yeah, but we're not saying anything about the actual TCY.
Yeah, and I agree that it didn't come up in that fashion, so I didn't know if we could put our finger on it in the runs that she did that resulted in 36, but all we can say about 37 and is interannual variability and no speculation on a drop in TCY. So thanks for humoring my question rather than report writing.
It's a good question. I imagine that it would result, but I would be hesitant to put it in without the analysis.
Yeah, fair enough. And thank.
All right, Michelle's hand is up. Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, so I noted Anne Marie's question in the chat of the MSAB discussing the monetary value and effects of the FIS, and just wanted to say that the way that this section is worded, and in particular number 38, which comes after we talk about the different FIS designs and attributing a monetary value to what is lost as you reduce or increase the uncertainty, reduce the certainty. Number 38 seems to imply that the non-economic value of the FIS is somehow secondary to the economic value that we've described in 36. And I think it would be better if the MSAB, expressed what we see as the primary value of the FIS in contributing to the science and the management of halibut. And I don't know if we necessarily need to call that out, but by putting number 38 here, it just seems to be like an afterthought of the non-economic value of the FIS, which I think we probably are all in agreement that is what the strength is of the FIS, and having that random sample of the base design.
Is that helpful if we reword it that way?
I was thinking that we could, that is helpful. Maybe we could move it up above to the very top, and maybe even a statement, to the effect of, I mean, our preference would be for the base design, and then if not that, then the base block design or something, recognizing the scientific value of the fifth data, and then going into, what happens as you reduce the quality of the fifth design.
Gotcha. It's starting to clear up. The fog is starting to clear here, and I'm tying it into actually what Lynn was saying. And MSAB noted. How about then ending those? Oh, wait, let me see. I'm thinking of a statement here that sort of ties it all together. The MSAB agreed that the base block design is is a preferred design for Pacific halibut management to reduce interannual variability in the TCY, optimize yield, things like that.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
How about this is really tying it back to a previous paragraph about those objectives too. Any thoughts on this paragraph?
I like it. Thanks, Alan.
I do too. I like this whole section now. I think this is really great improvements. So we're starting with there's many uses of the FIS data. The reduction in the not surveying those non-core areas results in increased uncertainty and likely bias in those areas. And then some results. Should 39 go before 38? I don't think it really matters, but it might flow a little better. Oh yeah, well no, it's not known for the triennial assessment, and then a summing up statement that the FIS base block design is preferable design. And this isn't agreed; it can be elevated even more to agreed as level 2, and then accepted, say, or endorse or something like that. Anybody want to do any changes to these paragraphs? Lynn?
Yeah, unfortunately, I want to go back to 37 briefly. I think it's
Yep.
37. Yeah. I'm not an economist, but I play one at work fairly often. The language there about this equates to a loss of, I think we need a squishy word in there somewhere, because right now it's saying, yes, we know this is what's going to happen, but there's so many factors outside of our, potential loss. Um, that potential loss is something that I've been instructed by many economists to put into both state and federal documents, because we don't know what the price is going to be. We don't know. There's so many other factors. So thank you for making that squishier.
Not a problem.
Hold it. I am an economist, and I don't like potential, simply because potential is in my mind bounding it that it's going to be no more than 2.7. I would say an estimated loss of 2.7 if the price was $6. Sorry to be so picky.
That's okay. That works for me too. Just something to say it won't be exactly $2.7 million.
Yeah, no, that was a good catch.
Is that U.S. or Canadian?
I appreciate the feedback from somebody with more expertise than myself.
Okay, any other thoughts on this one? Okay, I think that's great. Now
Sorry, we do have Tom's hand up. Sorry, I missed that. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, just as the backdrop, we kind of have this backdrop in our conversation, like the FIS now is not as accurate as it was. I think we're going to get some pretty serious pushback from Dr. Webster on that. I think he's going to tell you that the hook competition and the time-space model, in fact, is more accurate than what we were doing before, not less. And our backdrop here seems to be kind of like, well, we're reducing the accuracy of the FIS, therefore TCY is going down and variability is going up. He may well argue and say scientifically that is not correct. I've had these discussions with him before, and he feels what he's doing now is much more accurate scientifically than what we were doing before. So we might want to prepare ourselves for some pushback.
Yeah, Tom, that's very true, that the space-time model analysis and all the improvements that Dr. Webster's done to the survey analysis, as well as the design, have resulted in an increased accuracy and more, well, there's always been a faith in the survey, but it certainly hasn't resulted in increased accuracy. But what we're talking about now is the changes to the actual design and the reduction of the design. And there's been a lot of work recently by Dr. Webster using the space-time model to show that these reductions in the design do result in increased uncertainty and bias. And then those results from the space-time model were brought to the stock assessment and put through a simulation process where the stock assessment showed, well, if these reductions occur, there's more uncertainty in the stock assessment and a potential bias. And then we grabbed all of those results and brought all of that information into the MSE. So I think it's very consistent through all of the different modeling platforms and processes that we do here at IPHC, that these reductions will increase the uncertainty and result in a bias. And so, yeah, but you have a really good point, is that we have made improvements that have actually increased our certainty, our precision in this index, but now we're going back the other way in the recent years. And just to make a little plug, where there's a special session tomorrow by the commission from 10 to 1 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. that will talk about the FIS designs with the commissioners. And that's a open meeting. It's on our IPHC website. Okay, thanks everybody. How about we move on from this? you can continue thinking about it, and we have one more chance to do a quick look through it through the adoption, but we're getting close to the end of the day here. These final two, and that is whether or not the MSAB wants to make a recommendation to the change in the management procedure, being the current management procedures and annual stock assessment with an SPR, of 43%. And this paragraph has a couple of concepts. One, moving to a triennial stock assessment frequency and changing that SPR to 46%. There was some talk about, the triennial, it could be a trial period or something like that, to see how it would work and get a better idea of it. So yeah, I'll leave it at that, and then we can consider 41. So there's some justification for this. The triennial would increase the median coastwide TCY and reduce the interannual variability. Lower fishing intensity would reduce probability of that.
I would be more comfortable if we had some term where it's just a reference to trying this out for some term, one cycle or whatever, just to see how, to see what, what, just to see how it would work. And then, maybe it might give people a little more comfort in that it's not set in stone, and that we're trying this out to see how it would work, and da 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 da.
Is that too much, Jim, or would something like that work?
I don't know if it'd be 1 year, because if you're doing a triannual assessment, how would you, that's what they say, right? That would be more than 1 year, right?
Right, and actually, this isn't a full assessment year coming up, so it would 2025. But I mean, yeah.
Anyways, whatever, it just gets the what's the word I'm looking for, or the term?
Could you say 1 3-year cycle trial basis?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Oops. Paragraph 27 is highlighted because we'll refer back to that paragraph. Any other thoughts on this one?
I think I'm okay with 41, seeing that it looks like we're going to be addressing kind of the timelines and how that works with a full update of the assessment, or maybe not, and what tools would be available for non-assessment years.
Yeah, I mean, it states that the index would be used, the WP index would be used in non-assessment years. Okay, the coastwide TCY based on SPR 46% in assessment years, and proportional. Oh, and the end based on, I'll be more specific. based on the proportional change in the fifth WP in non-assessment years.
Okay.
Okay, that's a really good recommendation from the MSAB, using the results of the MSE to put together a modification to the management procedure. That's exactly how this process works.
I did see Lynn's hand up, but I saw you put it down. Lynn, just wanted to make sure that we didn't skip over you.
No, I have a question. I don't know how to articulate it, and I don't want to derail anything, so I might just email Alan later in the week.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so then finally in this section are any recommendations for further evaluations. And I think a triennial assessment frequency with the 3 FIST designs. With each of the 3 FIST designs. Various empirical rules to determine the reference coastwide TCY non-assessment years. So that's something other than the 032 WPO index. And that's carrying on a MSAB request from 19 as well. And then constraints on the interannual change in the reference coastwide TCY, such as yeah, there was something in the MSAB 19 report that described this, but any thoughts on this paragraph?
I don't have any thoughts on that paragraph, but I might pull a can we circle back to the previous one?
Yep.
But maybe see if anyone does have any thoughts on 42 first.
Or 41? Oh, at 42 first, and then we'll circle back.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, I'm not seeing any, so I will jump in. I'm still maybe I'm just not seeing it, and it's 2:30 on the second day of a full day MSAB. In 41, I'm still not seeing, or if we need to include something about maybe the commission should give consideration to the timelines of a triennial assessment, and how it relates to the 3-year full assessment update schedule. I think when we start a 3-year trial of a triennial assessment, depending on where we are in the calendar of doing a full review of the assessment, that might answer kind of how often or when they happen, if they happen in the same year, if they happen in different years.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be synchronized with the full stock assessment. So the full stock assessment is the assessment year.
Okay.
Does that help? What I wrote, using a triennial stock assessment frequency, stock assessment frequency synchronized with a full stock assessment.
Yes, that does help. Thank you.
Or would it be better just say I.E. a full stock assessment every 3rd year?
I like the way that you have it
Okay.
written now, but I don't have strong feelings either way.
It would sort of mean, if they were going to do this, that they would start this year with 2025 being a full stock assessment, and then 2026 would be a non-assessment year. Because we're doing 2025 assessment giving 2026 advice would be the full stock assessment. And then so the advice in 2027 or the limits in 2027 would be a non-assessment year. So that would give them a year of an assessment to prepare, I guess you might say. How about we put it this way, synchronized with the full stock assessment scheduled in 2025.
Yep. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, that's pretty specific there, I think. All right, well, that brings us to the end of this. So we have a number of options. I could run quickly through, all that's left is the adoption, yeah. I could run quickly through the brochure if people want to do that, or we could break. I'll clean this up and then we'll review it for adoption.
How long would you need to clean it up to get ready for adoption? About 30 minutes?
30 minutes max. I could probably do it in 20, but it would be nice, you know, you never know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we could schedule 20 and then I could say I need another 5 or something like that.
What do folks think? Any preferences?
How about hands up for anybody that wants to do a 15-minute review of the brochure? And if we do the review of the brochure, that means we can add a paragraph on whatever the MSAB wants to do with that. We got a couple of hands up. We got 2. Anybody else? People looking to get out of this meeting, stop hearing me talk. It's a lot of hearing me talk for 2 days. If my kids heard me talk this much, they would be rolling their eyes at me. I don't see a lot of interest in going over the brochure. How about this? What we'll do, the Secretariat will go ahead with creating this brochure for the annual meeting. And if any MSAB members have suggestions for it, just email me and let me know. Realizing that it'll be up to me whether to take that suggestion or not. And if the MSAB makes a request, then we really got to look at it. So if people are okay with that, we can go forward with that direction.
Would you want people to connect with you directly with feedback, or would you like it to go through the co-chairs?
Whatever you prefer.
It does not matter to me. Just
Yeah, I
thinking
mean,
about saving your inbox.
no, I don't mind. They can call me. You can call me and talk about it. And I'll send you the file and you can modify it for me. How about that? No, whatever's easiest for people, however the co-chairs want to be involved. But yeah, we'll go ahead and create this brochure. It's all material that you've seen in the past at past MSABs. It's material that's actually been presented at the annual meeting in the past as well. So it's nothing new. It's just, this is the glossy brochure. And so have a look at info document 2 and let me know if you have any reservations, serious reservations, or suggestions for edits, or some suggestions for pictures. I haven't decided on all the pictures for it yet either. All right, I'll stop sharing so I can see everybody. Okay, so it's 2:45. Do you want me to try to get this ready for adoption within the next 15 minutes? We'll start at 3.
Sure. If that's enough time for you, yeah.
I think so. I mean, I've been working on it. There'll be some things that we'll have to fill in after, and we'll do all the links and stuff after adoption. But I think I can get all the changes accepted and make it look all black, and then we'll walk through it.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, 3 o'clock then.
See you folks soon.
Thanks. Hello, I told you I might need a couple more minutes. So I think we're good though.
All right, sounds good. If you're good.
I am. So as a reminder, we'll walk through the report that's now labeled for adoption, and we'll just walk every single paragraph, and we can have a discussion about every paragraph. And as we move through the report, that means those paragraphs above are accepted. And when we get to the end, we can consider the report formally adopted. The Secretariat then will take the report, fill in the executive summary and the links, and so make a few more modifications. If there's some really glaring grammatical errors, we may correct those as well. Sometimes those creep in. But you consider when this report's up for adoption, there should be no change to the paragraphs that are adopted, unless it's a really bad grammatical error or something that the Secretariat feels can be worded better for the Commission to get the exact same point across. Very rare event, but it happens. So with that being said, I'll just walk through this and through the different report sections, and we'll just try to get it to look best on everybody's screen. So we'll go through and figure out the acronyms and what acronyms need to be mentioned here. We have the different levels to consider. The executive summary will be filled out, table of contents updated, and now we're in the meat of the report, where we have the opening of the session. And so the 20th, so paragraph 1, we'll walk through these. I'll say the paragraph and then we'll continue on. 21 board members positioned, 16 attended from the 2 contracting parties, and a total of 8 individuals attended the session as observers. So for example, how this might change is we will, when we go through this, we might spell out some of these things like 8, do something like that. So the text may change, but the meaning is exactly the same. Okay, and we'll go through the list of participants at the end just so you can have a look and make sure your name's spelled correctly and your email is correct if it's there. Okay, paragraph 1. And just raise your hand or speak up if you have anything to say about a paragraph. Paragraph 2, 2 apologies received from the 5 absent board members. Well, it might actually only be 4. Let me take a quick look while you're all looking at these. I know Peggy showed up today, was absent yesterday, so I might have counted wrong. Yeah, it's only 4. Oops. Okay. Paragraph 2. Paragraph 3. And co-chairs, if you see a hand go up, just holler it out. I can't see the hands on my main computer here. Paragraph 3 was recalling the primary role of the MSAB to advise the Commission, and quotes the rules of procedure. Paragraph 4, noting paragraph 3, the MSAB recalled the MSE process is stakeholder informed, scientifically driven. Paragraph 5, the MSAB adopted the agenda. Paragraphs 6 and 7, noting paper 3, and 10 members are scheduled to expire before the 21st session of the MSAB. Members in attendance indicated they would be willing to serve another term. So I will not give you the key to the shackles. Paragraphs 8 and 9, updates on actions arising from the MSAB 8 is the paper. 9, the MSAB agreed to consider and revise as necessary actions arising from MSAB for these to be combined with any new actions from MSAB 20. Correct. Okay. That's 8 and 9. 10, the detailed outcomes of the 100th session of the IPHC annual meeting. Oh, I said I was going to put and okay, because we did discuss those intersessional decisions. Okay, paragraph 11. Now we're getting into the program of work, and paragraph 11 is paper 06. Paragraph 12, actually I inserted during the short little break, and that's just recalling the Commission's priority objectives from the 99th annual meeting of the IPHC. And here are those priority objectives. Here's A, B, C, and D. So that was recalled. Paragraph 13, the MSAB noted that the objective optimize yield. I'm going to actually write it out instead. Encompasses the amount of yield as well as the interannual variability in yield. First recommendation. MSAB recommended the Commission priority objective optimize average coastwide TCY, C in paragraph 12 above, to be changed to maximize average coastwide TCY, and that this objective, along with variability in yield objective, be given equal consideration to allow for the evaluation of trade-offs between these two objectives. Give a second for you to read that, since that is a recommendation. Commission will see that. Oh, I got to move the cursor, don't I? Okay. Sorry, the cursor's right in the middle of the screen. I don't even know how to get rid of that. And, oh, pause, sharing, and annotate. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to pause for a moment. Apologies. And okay, that looks better. The little blue thing's gone. Okay, 14.
This is probably very nitpicky.
Okay.
In the first line of 14, we say optimize with a Z. In the second line, we say maximize with an S.
You know, Mark
I know that
Mangle.
we kind of switch back and forth.
No, but Mark Mangle, one of our SRB meetings early on, started laughing, and he says, I love it. You guys are an international organization between the US and Canada, and you really show it in your documents by sometimes going with an S and sometimes with a Z. So, or Z, whatever you want to say. Yeah, sorry. I think we'd like to be consistent with the Canadian spellings of S throughout this document, at least. So thanks for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Okay, paragraph 15. This is coming from the ad hoc meeting. Paragraph 16. '17. '18 follows from '17. It's nice when we've done all the drafting together because it makes this process go easy. How about now 19? I'm going to be, oh, you know what? I'm realizing I'm not being consistent. We are using RSB for these reference points, so I want to be consistent throughout. It's just nice to have that because it's really indicating that it's the relative spawning biomass of 36%. Okay, we're on 19.
I think you missed adding an RS in 18.
Yep, thanks. I'll review the document after adoption too and just make sure it's consistent throughout. But if you do notice that, please note it to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, 20.
Anne Marie, is your comment about the BMEY?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of B's in that sentence. All right, 20 and 21. I'm going to spell this one out.
I'm noting in 20 that that there are actually two ats. So we're noting the word at in the commission objective, and we use at in at or above, and then at least 50%. We might just want to be more specific.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, 20 again with the modifications. '21. Right, that brings us to 22. '23. '24. '25. '26. Gotta remember that paragraph. Their comment? Anybody? Okay. 27. This is a big one. I'll pause here for a moment. Any comments on 27? 28. And 29. Okay, we're on paragraph 30. I'm going to insert the word here to be a little bit more specific about that it's exactly how it changes from each year.
That makes it clearer for me. I was struggling a tad.
Okay, great. Yeah, me too. Because I know when I read this in three months, I'm going to have to remember. '31. This is a request. Do you think it needs to say changes in the TCY for assessment years again, or is this clear enough to really delineate the two?
Maybe I'm just daft, but that helps me as well.
Helps me too. Okay, 32. $34. And 35. Okay, 36. We've had a lot of discussion about this one. This is an accepted. So this is a level 1 being accepted.
Alan, there was quite a bit of discussion by Anne Marie in the chat about this, kind of bringing up kind of similar questions that I raised earlier also. And she was saying that it's unclear why the uncertainty appears to be directional, in that the TCEY declines as uncertainty increases. And she was indicating that if the uncertainty is unbiased, then she was confused as to why the outcomes seem to be going with or resulting in lower TCEY.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. For one thing, bias was included in this when the survey was did not survey the non-core areas. There was a bias in this, but that bias could be positive or negative. So it's, either way. So that doesn't explain why the TCY was less. But I think it's that there's a feedback here that's occurring with the additional uncertainty. You might set TCYs that are too high. And that has a feedback on the population, which on the average results in a lower yield on average. And so I think that's sort of the salient result of this. Understanding exactly why and that feedback would take a little bit of digging. So if the MSAB would like to understand that more, exactly why increased uncertainty causes a reduction in yield, I think that would be a request to come back and explain that in more detail. That's certainly something we didn't dig into in this meeting. But we could add that as a request if desired.
Well, I think that would be important to understand, but I understand you also saying that the commissioners are going to have a discussion about this tomorrow, about the fifth design. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what the issues are relative to the fifth and what the basis for their discussions tomorrow. But by having the fifth design tied to a TCEY decline, I mean, it just seems to be it's one directional with increased uncertainty in the fifth. And I think that would be good to understand, especially if we're attributing a value to the different fifth designs.
Let me know if this last part is even necessary. I can't remember exactly what you said.
Further exploration into the causes, especially since there's a monetary value being attributed to the fifth design.
Should there be something about only declines? Because I think that's part of the issue is it's unidirectional.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Or something to note that it only showed declines, but there was no increase. Thank you.
That'll be a fun one to dig into. Okay, so considering 36 and 37.
Michael Fowler's hands up. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay.
I'm assuming you weren't hearing me before.
No, sorry, Michael.
No.
The 2.7 million and price of $6 a pound. I'm assuming those are in US dollars. Taking into account Anne Marie's chat at lunchtime or just after lunchtime, that could be quite a bit more in Canadian dollars. So I think we should note that that's US dollars.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from the economist that announced himself earlier today. If that is, we can take that as a general relationship, noting $6 a pound, or would it be preferable to have the U.S. in there?
But 2.7 million would change though if it was Canadian dollars.
Right. Yeah, and it would be a different value if it was $8 a pound or $10 a pound. So I think it's sort of we could if you wanted to Yeah, I mean, $6 a pound, somewhat of a normal US dollar rate per pound.
I would
We
just
could
express
write
it.
in. What's that, Chris?
Sorry, if it's US dollars, it's fine. I mean, we're all know that US dollars are more than Canadian dollars. I mean, I would
But
just put.
I don't think it's US or Canadian dollars. If it was Canadian $6 a pound, it would still be $2.7 million Canadian.
Yeah, but I think we'd be saying, look, we're not getting $6 a pound Canadian for the
Yep.
fish. So if we're getting $6 a pound US, if that's more reflective, I would just say I would just put US dollars and US dollars in front of the 2.7 million, simply because I think that $6 US is maybe more reasonable than $6 Canadian, at least from the Canadian perspective here.
Yeah, so we can do this, or we could add in something like what's an average Canadian price?
Addresses my concerns.
Okay. That'd be $3.6 million at $8 a pound. Would that be useful to say? I'm trying to think of a way to make this relevant both for the US and Canada.
Well, I mean, in Canada, we're pretty good at, like, if it's US dollars, we kind of know what it means in Canadian dollars. We can guesstimate it. I think if you just put US,
okay,
that's good enough.
That's fine. Yeah, perfect.
And as Anne-Marie pointed out in the text earlier, it's worth even more now.
Yeah, right. Okay, 36 and 37, last call. All right. 38, analyses of triennial assessment frequency. $39. Agreed, level 2. $40, decision-making variability. $41. I think the word "for" is a little better. $41 is a recommendation, and I think a very important recommendation to the commission.
I'm wondering if the first sentence is a little long. If we could break that into 2 sentences.
I
To
know.
make it a bit more readable.
You know, one thing is we could remove that phrase. So it just says the MSAB recommended updating the reference MP for 1 3-year cycle on a trial basis using a triennial stock assessment frequency synchronized with the assessment.
Yeah, and then stop the sentence there.
The
Yeah, that's
coastwide
what I was thinking.
TCY would be based on SPR equals 46% in assessment years and based on the proportional change in the FISO 32WP index in non-assessment years. Yeah, I think that really helps it out.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any last thoughts on 41, a recommendation? Okay, 42, another recommendation. This is for further evaluations of the following MP elements. I added a little bit of detail to the constraints, and I brought this in from the MSAB020 report. That is the empirical rule. Anne-Marie, I just saw your comment. So the empirical rule to determine the reference coastwide TCY in non-assessment years. Is that what you're? Yeah, okay. All right. Any thoughts on 42? Okay, moving on. 43 is noting paper 7. 44.
So is in 44, I think,
Yeah.
which is simulated as decision-making variability in MSE simulations. Wouldn't it just be MSE? You simulated and then, I don't know, maybe it's just late in the day for me.
How about the word included here?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, moving on from 44 to a request in 45. And that is improvements to the harvest strategy policy figure, including specifying the adopted coastwide TCY, right? And 46. And 47, I note that I think there was a comment earlier from somebody that said, is 47 necessary? If we could combine 46 and 47 in some way. We could just say, we could put the noting at the end of 46 and remove 47, or would the MSAB like to keep them both as is?
Michael, go ahead.
I think we should keep them both because we're endorsing it, and then we're asking the commission to endorse it.
Yep.
Lynn, go ahead.
And I think a key part to that too is that the HSP could change based on research or future work, which would be lost otherwise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, see your point, Anne-Marie, in the chat too. Okay, 46, 47. All right, other business. And I just want to note, let's see. You're all making recommendations to see me more often, at least twice a year. Be careful what you ask for. So 48, 2 meetings. And 49, recommending the 21st session of the MSAB in first half of May, 2 to 3 days, and in person if possible. And then 50 gets at where to locate it, and that cost savings could occur.
Have you not hit the space bar when you put your and in? Accessible and, or what? Because I have it underlined there.
Yeah, it's just there's a comma in there. It's the Oxford comma. Yeah. Sorry, I keep always the paragraph marks on. If that's ever annoying to anybody, just let me know and I can turn them off. I always forget about that. Okay, before we go to adoption of the report, we'll fill in this. We're almost there. And then we'll fill in some details, but I just want to flash by the attendance list here. Make sure that you're on the list if you were here, and that your details are correct, the spelling of your name and all that other stuff. Oh, this is weird. I don't know why it keeps doing that. There we go. Yeah, we'll fix all these weird hyperlinks that it thinks it knows how to do. Here were absentees. And we received apologies from Linda and Carla. I did not.
I don't think Chuck is absent. I think he has to actually resign, or is there an official thing he has to do?
Yeah, he has to send us a notice of resignation. We, at least I'm not aware that it's been received yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm planning to get in touch with him. Yeah, okay. I can reach out to him, Alan.
All right, thanks, Gwen. Appreciate it.
No problem.
There were no commissioners at any time, were there?
Not that I saw.
The Secretariat will fill in these details based on the report of attendees, and then we'll fill in the details of the IPHC Secretariat that attended. There were a number of different Secretariat on at different times. And yeah, and saying that also, I just really want to thank for the Secretariat for all the support they gave during this meeting. I definitely couldn't do it without them, so really appreciate that. And they did a fantastic job. The agendas listed here, and then membership, which should match the document 3 that was revised recently, and then recommendations and requests. And I think I note up here. Yeah, don't worry, Emily, I'll get your email address in there. Okay.
Sorry, just before we wrap up, this is a little minor thing. Where we made several changes in SB to be RSB, will RSB need to be defined in the list of acronyms?
Yes, good point. We'll go through and make sure that's clear too. Yeah, well, I'll walk through and I'll do a full check when I have more than 15 minutes. So, okay, well, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your attention, involvement, participation. This has actually been a very amazing meeting, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to make a copy of it, and then I'm going to stop sharing. And so I think that brings us to the end. I just want to say before we go and let the co-chairs have their final say, thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it. This is why I like doing what I do. The involvement with stakeholders is why I got into this business. And so I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. So can't thank you enough. And I hope next year, well, I hope to see you all at the annual meeting. If not, I hope to see you at an MSAB meeting in the future.
Hey, Alan, before
Yep.
we go, one thing, I'm just out of curiosity on my part. I've heard the term like $30,000 to have one of these things in person. Do you know what the cost is online as compared to that?
I do not know. I don't
Yeah,
think
I'm just curious what kind of savings these online do as compared to being in person. So I just remember it was something in the financial report.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any cost with doing it online other than the cost of our time of participating. The costs for an in-person meeting are, hotel and food and,
Sure. Yeah.
transportation.
I was surprised how pricey it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, we have to fly and house a number of people, especially for a 3-day meeting. That can add up. No other costs. Dr. Dave Wilson says no other costs as the software is already covered, and so it's just the secretariat's time to run it and my participation, which is part of my job. Thanks, Tom. A good question, and hopefully you all.
Thanks to you and all the co-chairs for all the work they did.
Yeah, and really thanks to both the co-chairs for really helping out. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff they helped out with as well. With that, I'll stop talking. I'm sure you're all tired of hearing me, and I'll let other people have their say. So thank you very much.
And I think I can echo what some folks have said in the chat. A huge thank you to you, Alan. We know that this is not a small amount of work, and we appreciate all the work that you do and helping us through these meetings. I echo your comments that I think we've made a lot of progress this meeting. There was a lot to do, and I think we've made some really good progress. I'm starting to understand more now that I've been around for a little while. And yeah, I appreciate everyone's efforts, everyone's candor, and hopefully we'll see you in person when you all come to my city in January.
Yeah, looking forward to that trip in January. Again, yeah, thanks to everyone for participating and just being a part of the discussion. It's always awesome to kind of hear other perspectives outside of like kind of our little scientific island that we sometimes sit on. Alan, you do amazing. Love listening to the work that you do and kind of how you guide us through that. So I really appreciate your help during this meeting and look forward to seeing you all next time.
All right. Well, everybody take care. Look forward to seeing you in Vancouver. Thanks for hosting, Gwen. It's going to be a great time. I love the city. And in the meantime, feel free to email me, contact me, any questions. We're here for you.